The question is deep water offshore drilling a thing of the past, or are we going to see more of it? Joining us to talk more about the economics of this is Alan Krupnick, Director of the Resources for the Futures Center for Energy, Economics, and Policy. Welcome.
Got that right. Thanks.
Let's start with this. It's controversial, it's dirty, it's messy, and as we can see, it can be expensive when things go wrong. Where are we on deep water drilling?
Well, we're going to do more of it. This isn't the end of deep water
Who's
drilling.
we?
We,
the
all
world.
over the world. We're going to do more of this. We're going into deeper water. We're going into more challenging environments. We're going into the Arctic. We're going, all over on deep water. There's plays and areas in Africa.
What's the biggest benefit of deep water? I mean, somebody who's against this perhaps might ask you the same question is, what's the biggest benefit of it?
Well, the biggest benefit is to feed our appetite for oil, right? It's to, in China, for instance, you're seeing huge growth in transportation that almost entirely is based on oil. So we need the supply to feed our economy, keep it going.
But has the dangers been minimized? I mean, since the BP accident, there's been a lot of talk, and I'm not an expert, but has the dangers been minimized on drilling?
No, the dangers haven't. We had the case of Shell Oil, had big plans spent to drill in the Arctic, spent $5 billion up front to do it, and bad weather set in. They couldn't drill. They had a ship that went aground. These are challenging environments. In fact, we've done some research that shows the deeper the water, the further away from shore, the greater the rate of accidents. So these are challenging.
So if there are critics out there, and there are many critics out there, they'll say, well, why do governments even approve deep water drilling if the probability of an accident grows higher and higher the further out you go?
Yeah.
We're talking about deep water oil drilling.
Yeah.
Why do governments even allow it without the discussion of putting safeguards into effect?
Well, okay, well, I guess I reject the premise a little bit, because the governments are quite on top of understanding that there are big challenges with drilling, and they're regulating. But one could argue, as we've seen from the BP oil spill, that they're not regulating enough. This was a problem this well was a problem well. There evidently, we'll see what the courts say, but we're not sufficient safeguards in place. We're not the appropriate culture of safety for these spills, these dangers to be minimized.
But what you're saying is, regardless of what happens in the case in New Orleans, more drilling is going to take place, and more likely in deeper waters. And you're saying the dangers have not been minimized. I guess the next question is, where in the world do you see most of this new drills taking place?
Yeah, well, I think that's a great question, because we're seeing competition for deep water drilling in many places, and probably in safer places. So one of the big areas of new drilling is in North Dakota. If you're talking about the United States, what's called the Bakken is an area with oil shale, what's called tight oil. It's very deep, and it's obtained through hydraulic fracturing. So putting chemicals and mostly water under pressure, deep underground, fracking
and you
the rock,
mentioned the Arctic as well, right?
bringing it up. We're also talking about the oil sands in Canada. So these sources, relative to deep water drilling, may be quite a bit safer. The pressures are lower. The probabilities of major disasters, like we saw with BP, are probably a lot lower.
So there's a little bit of a silver lining here, Alan Krupnick.
So there's a little bit of a silver lining.
I want to thank you for your time. I apologize we are out of time. Thank you again for helping us better understand this issue.